What is up, sports geeks? It's your host, Josh, here back with another episode, joined by Alec yet again. Alec, how are we doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm ready to chat some fantasy football again. So last week we talked running backs, right? Which, if you're watching, you haven't seen that yet, make sure you go check it out. Great episode. We're talking about some 5 running backs we think are undervalued. We're back today with 6 wide receivers we think are undervalued as well. We were talking about it last week that the wide receiver position is significantly deeper, right? I think the names got brought up last week. The wide receiver 30 compared to the running back 30 was T. Higgins compared to Brian Robinson Jr. So wide receiver position is significantly deeper, and you just have so much more fluctuation, right, as to who can emerge as a target monster. Teams can supply 2, maybe even 3 fantasy relevant receivers each year. So we have 6 of them here today that we think are undervalued. We're just going to hop right into this. I do quickly want to comment, though, this Thursday we're going to start doing – every Thursday we're going to start doing mock drafts, so live mock drafts here on YouTube. It's going to be a blast. We're drafting, whether you guys are here or not. If people want to join in, the link will be in the chat so people can join in and draft against us. It'll be a blast. But other than that, we'll go ahead and hop right into it. Alec, all you with your first receiver here.
George Pickens. So with George Pickens, I really like his volume projections this year. Van Jefferson is the number 2. That's what I hear on Twitter. So that's never a good sign when your number 2 guy in your offense is projected to be Van Jefferson. But we would be remiss of saying Steelers are great at drafting receivers. The track record of Steelers receivers is great. That is why I believe in George Pickens. And then also on that same, kind of same topic, Roman Wilson, they drafted him this year. I think he'll eventually be the number 2 this year in this offense. But, with Pat Freiermuth and the combo of Van Jefferson and Roman Wilson, I don't really see anybody taking away targets from George Pickens. Along with a quarterback upgrade.
Yep, absolutely. And the quarterback upgrade, like Russell Wilson is a deep passer, right? And he's able to supply deep passes down the field. And so I think you take, like he was able to do that with Seattle, right? With, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, both guys that were able to catch passes down the field. And George Pickens absolutely is electric down the field. His ability to go up and high point the ball and make spectacular catches. We've seen it already, right? He could have 4 catches a game. One of them is a highlight reel catch. So he's great at sucking in the catches when he gets targeted. But the target share has never been huge because Deontay Johnson there, right? And so I love the George Pickens call there. I'm going to go ahead and hop into my first one here. And there's 3 rookie receivers I kind of want to talk about. I only have one of them on here. The guy I have on here is Ladd McConkey. The other 2 I want to really briefly touch on is Keon Coleman and Xavier Legette. If you hear him say it, he'll say Xavier Legette. But if you hear anybody else, they say Xavier Legette. But Xavier Legette, we just talked about Deontay Johnson. He's with Carolina now, right? He's going to take some targets. Bryce Young is going to take a jump up. He's going to. He was terrible last year. You were the number 1 overall pick. You're not going to be worse. And so he's going to take a jump up, even if it's minor. You have Deontay Johnson, and then it's Xavier Legette. And so you're being drafted as wide receiver 4 or 5. Sometimes maybe even the wide receiver 6 on your own team or on a specific team, right? And you're the wide receiver 2 with a chance to win the wide receiver 1 job. I love it. Keon Coleman going to the Bills offense. He's going to be the wide receiver 1 from the start, probably. Even if he's the number 2 to Shakir, who I think you want to touch on later. Yeah. He's on the field all the time, right? And he's a freak athlete. He's going to benefit from Josh Allen's arm punts. But now I'll shut up and get to Ladd McConkey. So Ladd McConkey, his ADP is 100 right now. He's currently being drafted as wide receiver 44. And the thing is that this offense, you have quarterback play that's really good, and you have a coach that's going to probably want to be a run first, but your running back room isn't great, right? So I don't think you're going to be running the ball all that much. And you still have to think game script, right? It's not like your defense is an elite defense by any means. So you give up a lot of points. You're going to have to throw the ball. And when you throw the ball, Josh Palmer is not going to be the wide receiver 1. He's listed as it right now. I can promise you Ladd McConkey is going to win that job. And when he does, if you look at the difference between last year and this year, you have 52% of the target share from last year that's no longer on the team between Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Gerald Everett, and Austin Eckler. So you have 4 guys who were just getting peppered with targets, 52% of their team's targets that aren't there anymore. The only replacement you added is Ladd McConkey. He's going to get peppered with targets. I don't want to compare him and say he's going to be this year's Puka Nacua, because nobody's going to be this year's Puka.
Yeah.
Puka was finished, I believe, as the wide receiver 5 last year as a rookie. That's not going to happen. But I could very much see he's being drafted as a wide receiver 44. I could see a wide receiver 20 finish.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely within the range, just based on projections, and that's even with Josh Palmer, commanding targets. So
yes,
it's going to be strange, looking at this offense. I think it will be more run heavy, but like you said, they have Justin Herbert. They don't have they're going to throw the ball. So somebody needs to catch passes, and Ladd McConkey is tied to Justin Herbert for. I know we're talking about redraft, but dynasty value, they're tied to each other for the next 4 to 5 years as well. So Ladd McConkey is definitely good for redraft, definitely good for dynasty. So I definitely like that. So my next guy, so I'm gonna save somebody that you just mentioned for the end. So I'm gonna go second here. I'm gonna go Christian Watson.
Okay.
So this is kind of like a guy that you might talk about in a little bit. So he can't really stay on the field, but when he does play, he is electric. He can go off for, and Christian Watson's somebody that I like to target in best ball. You don't have to worry about, picking him on the right week where he catches that 70-yard touchdown. But, just with Jordan Love took a step the last 11 weeks of last year. So Jordan Love was a quarter away from beating the San Francisco 49ers. They should have won. Genuinely, they should have won. So Christian Watson is on an offense where all the receivers seem relatively the same. Like Reed, Watson, they kind of feel the same. But just the draft capital of Watson, I trust Green Bay when they draft receivers, and they drafted him relatively high than what they've drafted some other guys. So I think Watson can definitely take that step. His ADP is about 102, so it's not too rich. So you're kind of getting the injury discount with him.
Yeah. Well, and he's somebody too that, if you're drafting somebody, and we say this all the time, is it depends on how your draft goes. But if you have 2 guys that are cemented as wide receiver 1s, or wide receiver 1 and 2 on your team, and you have, I don't know, say in Amon-Ra and Mike Evans or something like that, right? 2 guys that are going to be uber consistent. You're not really removing them from the roster. Taking a guy as your wide receiver 4, like a Christian Watson, like a Ladd McConkey, somebody who has the upside of okay, if they come out and they're healthy all year and Jordan Love absolutely loves him and this is his breakout year, okay, why wouldn't you take a flyer on him, right?
Yeah, why not?
I don't mind it. There's definitely competition for targets, but like you said, it's like the weird competition, right? You have Dobbs and Wicks and Watson there and Jaden Reed there, go green. But I just nobody's really cemented themselves. I mean, Jaden Reed was a rookie last year, right? Dontayvion Wicks was also a rookie last year. I mean, this was the youngest team in the NFL last year. I don't know who's gonna emerge as the top target.
Yeah, and also Jaden Reed last year, he scored on one out of every 7 touches. That's not sustainable throughout season to season. So if Christian Watson's healthy, he will get deep targets, and I think that is worth at least, as you said, how your draft goes dependent, worth at least a flex throw. Where he's going at his ADP.
Yeah, I don't mind that. And I'm going to go with somebody very similar. And they're for my team, so I have analytics behind this, so it's not just a homer pick. It's Jameson Williams. He's currently being drafted as the wide receiver 48. And last year, through the last 7 games of the season, he was the wide receiver 48. Now those 7 games, he had Josh Reynolds there the entire time. And Josh Reynolds he's gone, right? He's with Denver now, and there's no replacement to him at all. And so Josh Reynolds last year had 5 touchdowns, so you'd like to think that J-Mo is going to take over some of them, right? And Jameson Williams has not had a start to the season in his career yet. That's ideal. This year he will. His rookie year, right? He doesn't play until week 12, and even then it's really, really spotty because he's recovering from the torn ACL in the national semifinal, right? And with Bama. Then comes in last year, has the gambling suspension for the first 4 games. And then in his first 5 games that he plays last year, he breaks 50 yards one time in 5 games. And then in the last 7 games, he does it 5 times. And so to me, you're giving me a guy that has shown a huge increase throughout the season, as when he's able to play, he's doing well. And like, as in the sense that he's growing. So if you tell me that from week 5 to week 15, he's going to like double, triple his, volume in catches, in yards and everything, then why wouldn't I want him from week 1 to 16 when you're 16, you're in the championship?
Yeah.
And in last year, you had Amon-Ra, who's the wide receiver 4 in all of PPR, and Laporta, who's the tight end 1 in all of PPR. And then you still had, the Reynolds, JMO. If you combine those two volumes, JMO was very sustainable. So my thing, not even mentioning the fact that in camp, I've seen a ton of tweets that he has looked unreal in camp from non-Lions beat writers, I want to clarify. So I love Jameson Williams as a Lions fan, love him as a just pure fantasy football, analysis. I also really like him.
No, and you actually, if you were to tell me, like, if I was a hater or a lover, you definitely say I was a Jameson Williams hater. I have been, I was so out on him last year, but I'm kind of in on him. His ADP is like around 110, 111. He's a flex play, and his upside is like around where he goes. It's Jameson Williams, Cortland Sutton, Curtis Samuel, Tyler Lockett, like Brian Robinson and Gus Edwards and Zeke. Like, why not throw a dart throw on a guy who was just a top 15 pick 2 years ago, and was unbelievable, won a Heisman as a wideout. So the talent. What?
Devontae Smith won it, but Jameson Williams could have won it.
You're right. I always get them mixed up.
No, you're fine. But no, he could have. I mean,
to me in college, they were like not very similar because JMO's obviously faster, but like they're just kind of smaller.
And it was the same time frame of like those skinny Alabama wide receivers that just torched defenses. So
torched Ohio State's defense. So sorry about that. I don't know any ball, but but yeah, I don't know. He was elite at Alabama. I mean, we saw that his college profile was unbelievable. They drafted him really high. So, if they believe in him, I believe in him. That offense is unbelievable. I think Amon-Ra, he could still finish as a top 5 receiver for sure. But Laporta repeating tight end 1, don't really know about that. So it's really hard to do unless your name's Travis Kelce. So,
the other thing too is that if Amon-Ra missed, like last year, he missed like a couple games maybe. If James, like with no Josh Reynolds, like when Amon-Ra missed games last year, Josh Reynolds was like starting in leagues. So
he was a couple of weeks. He was like our sleeper, where it was like, okay, he's gonna score 10, at least 10, no more than 15, but like 10 like he's a great flex play.
Yeah, and so now you're telling me if Amon-Ra, as a Lions fan, I don't even want to think about this. If Amon-Ra goes down and misses 4 or 5 games, Jameson Williams is a wide receiver probably 1 in fantasy purposes during that time frame, because you don't have another receiver to throw to. I mean, Donovan Peoples-Jones is your wide receiver 2. Yeah. Nothing against him, but like JMO's your clear 2. And so I think that if Amon-Ra goes down, and then we talk about it for running backs all the time, right? Of taking somebody that's a handcuff.
Yeah.
Jameson Williams, I think standalone value is good. Handcuff value is unreal.
I think that's a great way to put it, where standalone value, you can still use him as a flex, or as a handcuff, you can still use him as a flex. But standalone value, if Amon-Ra gets hurt, I mean, he could be a wide receiver 2, for sure. So my last person, I actually want to lump 2 people into this because I kind of want to like, I don't know, it kind of takes a little bit to explain like their situation. So Khalil Shakir for the Buffalo and Brandon Cooks, I want to put together. So Khalil Shakir will probably be the number 2 for Buffalo. He's never commanded that many like targets, but it's kind of hard to with the tight ends last year and Stephon Diggs getting all those targets. So I'm banking on Shakir taking over. Just he had a great divisional round against the Chiefs. He was balling out. And I really think he can take a step. If Keon Coleman busts, Khalil Shakir will easily be the number 1 receiver in this offense. And I'm not talking target because probably it's Dalton Kincaid, but he will be the number 1 receiver. And I don't know if my bias is I'm out on Keon Coleman, but I'm not super in on Keon Coleman. So if you're in that camp, Khalil Shakir could definitely be a play. And then Brandon Cooks, I was looking this up. So Dallas almost throws the ball 40 times a game.
Mhm.
So CeeDee Lamb's going to get paid. CeeDee Lamb's easily the number one option.
Yeah.
Their wide receiver, he's a wide receiver 2. Their wide receiver 3 is Jalen Tolbert. And then after that, it's nobody. So Brandon Cooks, just from a sheer where he is at the time he is at least at his ADP is 149, is at least a bench player for you in a PPR. Like a deep bench player.
Yeah, I mean, so Brandon Cooks last year, his final 4 games went 6 targets, 2 targets, but in the 2 targets game had a touchdown, and then 8 targets with a touchdown, 8 targets with a touchdown. And so you take that offense, and now you're going to give me probably a more pass-heavy offense than what they were last year, and give me a wide receiver 2 at pretty insane value. I feel like you have to take it, right? I'm pulling up he's the wide receiver 61. I mean, this is just a stashed bench guy. I mean, 161 is his ADP. If you're in a 12-man league, that's like the 16th round. Like that's like
the last round
instead of a defense. Yeah. So that's a great point. Of if you're in a league where you have defenses and kickers, don't draft a defense. Especially don't draft a defense. Draft Brandon Cooks and let him sit on your bench, especially during camp, as they're having these contract negotiations too. If they completely fall through and they're like, yeah, no, CeeDee Lamb's going to sit out for the first 3 weeks. Okay, you better have Brandon Cooks on your team. You know what I mean?
And I know Brandon Cooks. I'm looking, and I know he's 30. I get that. There's a chance where he stinks. I mean, there for sure is, just that he falls off. But I don't know if I'm biased, but like Brandon Cooks for basically my entire life has just been consistent. So I don't think he's going to come out here. I don't think he's going to put up 1,200 yards. I don't think he's going to put up 10 touchdowns. But if you're telling me that you could draft him in the last round of a fantasy draft and be on an offense that throws the ball over 40 times a game with Ezekiel Elliott as their starting running back and Rico Dowdle as the backup, like I'm going to at least have him as my last bench guy.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. Okay, my last guy here. We've seen kind of a theme here in playing in good offenses or for a good quarterback. And I'm going to stay with that, and it's Rashee Rice, currently being drafted as wide receiver 34. And my thing about him is there's the suspension looming, right? And you know it's coming at some point, but we don't know when. And to me, this is the exact same thing that happened 2 years ago with Alvin Kamara, right? Is he was getting suspended. We knew he was getting suspended, but we didn't know when. You can find insane value because people don't want to draft him because of that. I don't think Rashee Rice is getting suspended this year. I think it's going to be a next year thing because they're still investigating it. Camp has already started. You have less than 6 weeks until the season starts. You're getting down to crunch time, and I mean the investigation is still going. They haven't even started like hearings and stuff like this. So I just think that Rashee Rice is going to play this year, in my opinion. There's still a chance he comes back and they say you're going to get suspended. If he plays, I understand you add Hollywood Brown, you add Xavier Worthy to this team. Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback in the game, not even a question.
No.
Maybe the most talented quarterback to ever play. And he already has a connection with Rashee Rice. So the way that they used Rashee Rice last year, they used him in the screen game, they used him in the deep ball game, but they really love just getting the ball in Rashee Rice's hands. Xavier Worthy, I'm not super high on. I think that at Texas, if he doesn't break the 40-yard dash record, he's probably a third-round draft pick. That's my hot take on him. So the fact that he's really, really skinny, and other than speed, I don't know how much he has. He still could be good. Even if he is good, Rashee Rice is the wide receiver 1 in the offense. That's not going to be taken away from him unless he's suspended. If he's not suspended, you have the wide receiver 1 with Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. You're drafting him as your wide receiver 3, maybe even 4. Hell yes.
So I'm looking at Rashee Rice's game log last year. So before the bye, so their bye was week 10 last year. Okay. So before the bye, this is the 9 games he played. So 5 targets, 2 targets, 7, 5, 5, 4, 6, 5, 2. Okay. So bye weeks, week 10. After the bye, 5, 10, 9, 10, 9, 12. And then the last week he played, he had 5 catches for 127 yards. So in the playoffs, he was around 10 targets every game. So Rashee Rice is here to stay. He definitely – so after the bye, they made it a point of emphasis to get him involved, and he is a really good NFL player, regardless of all the off the field stuff. Don't agree with that. But from you talking like from just a pure value standpoint, his ADP on Sleeper is 72. I mean, that's round 7. So, it's kind of hard, even if, and we talked about this before, we talked about it last week with the Nick Chubb thing. It depends on how you're building your team. If you think your team's good enough, if he gets a 6 to 8 game suspension, if you think your team's good enough for when it's week 12 and you need Rashee Rice, like if you can be in contention then and draft him, like you have to go for it. Right. Because Rashee Rice is a potential league winner at that value for sure.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. Even if he gets suspended, he's back for the playoffs in fantasy football for sure. So if you have your wide receiver 1 and 2, like we'll stay with consistent, right, with Amon-Ra and Mike Evans, 2 guys that are locked in your lineup, dude, take it. This is like the best investment of a flyer that you can get, because he's going to be back for playoffs no matter what, and when he's back, he's getting peppered with targets from the best quarterback in the game. So, I'm very high on Rashee Rice, given the value. But those are I would say 6, but we kind of had 7, 8, 9 guys in there, right? Yeah. Christian Watson, Brandon Cooks, Khalil Shakir, George Pickens, Lad McConkey, Keon Coleman was in there, Xavier Legette, Rashee Rice, and Jameson Williams. Those are the 9 guys that we kind of highlighted here, and we're high on all of them given the value. All of them we feel they're undervalued. And there's so many discrepancies.
So many more.
Especially when you're in these earlier drafts. It's getting to a point where they're not necessarily early anymore. But if you're drafting like now, there's so much room for to really, really target some guys whose draft stocks now are going to be just insanely different than their draft stocks in 2 or 3 weeks. I think like Alvin Kamara last year, right? If you took Alvin Kamara last year was like, when it was a 3-game, when it came out and said it's only going to be 3 games, he was being drafted in the 6th or 7th round. And then by the time it was like in a month, right before the season, he was being drafted in the 3rd or 4th. So it's like there's so much discrepancy that you can find between draft picks and real values. And these are 6, really though, 9 guys that we feel the value is definitely there. So this is a wide receiver episode. We had the running backs one that was last week, and then we have the mock draft coming this Thursday. Next week's episode to be determined. It's going to be fantasy football related though. Maybe quarterbacks and tight ends looped together. Who knows? But other than that, this has been the Sports Geeks podcast. They play, we talk. Thanks for watching.
Puts up a 3. Won't go. Rebound by